Hi gentlemen, in the final installment for chapter 13 on inheritance, we'll be looking at mutations and what exactly is mutations. Let me kickstart this lesson with a quick snippet from the Fantastic Four.
They have never seen the sun or the ocean or any of God's creatures. They have no birth certificates, no names, besides the ones we have given.
Alright, so in the fictional world of X-Men, all these children are known as mutant children because they were born with a mutant gene that grants them superhuman abilities. Some of these children inherited from their parents who were also mutants, but in some cases, they had the ability on their own. It was not passed down.
They have never.
So in the real world, mutation does not grant us superhuman abilities. So what exactly is mutation? Let's dive in deeper with a few examples of mutation and what are the factors that increase the chance of mutation in human beings. So the definition of mutation, let's start off with that. Mutation is the sudden change, sudden spontaneous change in your genetic structure or the number of chromosomes. Sometimes mutations can be inherited, but sometimes it is not passed down from one generation to another. So do take note of that. Let me pen it down over here and do it along with me as you watch the video. So not all mutation can be passed down. All right, so some happens on its own suddenly and spontaneously. It cannot be predicted. It happens out of the blue. All right, so let's think about it. Are mutations all entirely bad? There will be two kinds of mutations that I'll be discussing in this video. One is genetic mutation. Genetic mutation affects your genetic sequence. All right, and when there's a change in your genetic sequence, it will change protein structure in your body, and that will change your phenotype. Right, the visible characteristics on the outside. The second kind of mutation is known as chromosomal mutation. We know that in human, there are 46 chromosomes. So when there's a change in the number of chromosome, it will result in chromosomal mutation. And I'll be giving a few examples of each mutation shortly. Let's start with genetic mutation. So usually genetic mutation occurs when gametes are formed. Gametes referring to sperm and egg. So during the production of sperm and egg in male and female respectively, okay, and if the sperm and egg that have been mutated, right, somehow successfully fertilize and give rise to a new child, the child will inherit some of these genetic changes. In genetic mutation, it can also occur to somatic cells. Simply put, somatic cells are your normal body cells. Alright, so this could happen to other genetic materials in your body. And this sometimes may lead to cancer, and it only affects the individual itself. I'll give an example. Alright, for a person who often expose himself to UV exposure without any sunscreen protection, it increases the chance of the person getting skin cancer, definitely. But it does not pass down to his offspring. Alright, so in genetic mutation, there are two ways of happening. Firstly, it happens to your gametes during the production. And the second, alright, happens to your normal body cells due to external environment changes. Right? People who are exposed to radiation, people who are exposed to overexposed to UV lights because of the time that they spend outdoor, and people who work with mutagenic material, right? The cancer causing materials also has a higher chance when it affects their normal body cells to function healthily. This can happen at any time. Anytime, any age. Alright, but for gamete mutation in gametes, it affects a person's lifetime. So to illustrate what happens when there's a change in your genetic sequence, let's take a look at this video to understand how genetic mutation happens in your cells.
Gene mutations are changes in the base sequence of the DNA in a gene. They can be brought about in several ways. Assume that the normal base sequence on a coding strand is ATG, CAT, GTA, and TTG. The amino acid sequence produced should be methionine, histidine, valine, and leucine. If one or more bases are deleted from the coding strand, the reading frame will be shifted. Thus, the amino acid sequence after the point of mutation will be altered. The resulting protein is usually non-functional. Similarly, if one or more bases are inserted into the coding strand, the reading frame will also be shifted, and the amino acid sequence after the point of mutation will be altered. The resulting protein is usually non-functional too. If a base on the coding strand is substituted with another base, a triplet code on the strand will be changed. This may result in one different amino acid in the polypeptide produced. If that amino acid alters the conformation of the protein sufficiently, the mutation would have an obvious effect on the phenotype. Similarly, if the order of bases on the coding strand is changed, a different amino acid in the polypeptide may also result.
Alright, so the previous video is for your information only. Okay, you do not need to know the different ways of the genetic changes, but I hope that in this video you can see that when there is a change, be it the deletion, addition, substitution, or the change, a slight change in the genetic sequence, will have an impact on the peptide sequence that affects the protein structure and shape. So like what I always say in class, a change in shape results in change in function of the protein. If the protein does not have its specific 3D shape, it will not be able to carry out its normal function. There are two examples that you need to know for genetic mutation. Alright, so I'll just put a header over here to make sure that you're on the same page with me. Alright, so the first case study that you need to know is albinism. What exactly is albinism? It's due to a change, mutation in a recessive allele. So the recessive allele sequence is changed, resulting in albino individual to lack pigment in their skin. So often they how they look different from other individuals, they typically have white hair, paler skin color, and reddish eye color instead. They are very sensitive to light, and I'll explain why in a bit, due to the lack of production of a particular protein known as melanin. Right, this is the protein that produces the color in your hair and your skin. So in Singapore, one very prominent example of an albino individual is the grandchild of our former Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, grandchild, and it's also the son of our former Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. So you can see that albinism, occurs to only one individual in the family, due to a genetic change in the sequence of the bases, as you can see in the previous video. So what exactly is albinism? I think a simple animation and video would help to better explain what causes albinism in individuals.
Albinism is a genetic condition where a person's body isn't able to make pigments, so people with this condition have white skin and hair with light blue or pink eyes. Albinism is a complex disorder. You get your skin, eye, and hair color from melanin, which is distributed through a number of genes, but if one of these genes carry a certain mutation, the amount of melanin that is distributed through your body changes, where sometimes this mutation will keep your body from producing any melanin at all. Melanin is produced by cells called melanocytes, which are mostly found in your skin and eyes, but also in your hair. People with darker skin have a higher concentration of melanin in their skin as opposed to fair-skinned people. Albinism is the absence of melanin completely, and it's not just people. Any animal with pigment can be albino too. Albinism is passed down genetically. In most cases, there is someone else in the family who has the condition, but not all cases are the same. There are actually many types of albinism that all affect a different gene mutation.
Alright, so like what the video mentioned, albinism is something that's passed on from one generation to another. So if we go back to the example of our former PM family, you may wonder, right? There is no other individual in the family that has albinism. So how is it being passed down to his son? So if we go back to our understanding of how certain characteristics passed down from one generation to another, all right, based on theory, it could be because the parents have a copy, all right, they are carrier of this genetic mutation, but they still have a copy of the dominant allele, so they are still able to express enough melanin to give them their hair color, skin color, and eye color. All right, but if the son inherits one copy from each parent, this results in albinism in the child instead.
Albinism is a rare genetic condition.
Alright, so the second example of genetic mutation is sickle cell anemia. Alright, so this affects a person's red blood cells. As you can see in the picture over here. Alright, this is normal red blood cell, and these are known as sickle cell red blood cells. Alright, sickle red blood cells, as seen in the shape, right, looks like a sickle, right, moon shape. So this is due to the mutation in the gene that controls the production of hemoglobin. When the gene is being mutated, a person has hemoglobin S instead. This results in a change in just one amino acid that completely changed the 3D shape of the hemoglobin. And the problem comes, alright, when the hemoglobin S molecule found inside sickle cell red blood cell starts to clump together with each other as compared to the normal hemoglobin A that can be found in healthy normal red blood cells. So when they clump together, it creates the sickle shape. So it's also a recessive gene mutation. Alright, so what does that mean? Alright, in order to get sickle cell anemia, a person has to inherit 2 recessive alleles, right, from each parent. 1 from each parent in order to suffer from this condition. So what happens is due to a change in one base, alright, so from A to G in the sequence, resulting in a change in the mRNA sequence, and this changes the polypeptide sequence as well. So instead of HbA normal hemoglobin being produced, HbS, alright, the abnormal hemoglobin is being produced, causing the shape to change. So this is another visualization. Alright, so in normal condition, alright, the protein that's supposed to be expressed is glutamine, alright, but instead valine is produced. Do you need to remember? No. Alright, it's just for your information. So you can see over here, alright, if a person only has one copy of the recessive allele, alright, the person is known as a carrier. So the person does not have any problem transporting blood, oxygen in their blood to the rest of the body, since there is still one copy of the healthy gene. Alright, but when two carriers have children, it increases the chance of their child suffering from sickle cell anemia. And looking at this family three over here, all right, there is 1 in 4 chance, 25% chance of the child suffering from sickle cell anemia, 50% chance of the child being a carrier, so they must be very careful when they have children, and there is one quarter chance, 25% chance of having a normal healthy child. So sickle cell anemia only happens to homozygous recessive individual. And this affects how much oxygen can be transported in the patient, and sometimes can be fatal if oxygen is not being transported effectively around the person. Even though it is unfortunate for some people to have sickle cell anemia, all right, but being carrier comes with an advantage. What exactly is this advantage? Let's take a look next.
What's most surprising about this malignant mutation is that it originally evolved as a beneficial adaptation. Researchers have been able to trace the origins of the sickle cell mutation to regions historically ravaged by a tropical disease called malaria. Spread by a parasite found in local mosquitoes, malaria uses red blood cells as incubators to spread quickly and lethally through the bloodstream. However, the same structural changes that turn red blood cells into roadblocks also make them more resistant to malaria. And if a child inherits a copy of the mutation from only one parent, there will be just enough abnormal hemoglobin to make life difficult for the malaria parasite, while most of their red blood cells retain their normal shape and function. In regions rife with this parasite, sickle cell mutation offered a serious evolutionary advantage. But as the adaptation flourished, it became clear that inheriting the mutation from both parents resulted in sickle cell anemia. Today, most people with sickle cell disease can trace their ancestry to a country where malaria is endemic. And this mutation still plays a key role in Africa, where more than 90% of malaria infections occur worldwide. Fortunately, as this adaptation thrives, our treatment for sickle cell continues to improve. For years, hydroxyurea was the only medication available to reduce the amount of sickling, blunting symptoms, and increasing life expectancy. Bone marrow transplantations offer a curative measure, but these procedures are complicated and often inaccessible. But promising new medications are intervening in novel ways, like keeping oxygen bonded to hemoglobin to prevent sickling, or reducing the stickiness of sickled cells. And the ability to edit DNA has raised the possibility of enabling stem cells to produce normal hemoglobin. As these tools become available in the areas most affected by malaria and sickle cell disease, we can improve the quality of life for more patients with this adverse adaptation.
So in summary, heterozygous individual, which means individuals who are carriers, all right, they have at least one copy of the abnormal allele, all right, has an advantage in malaria-infected area. Why is this so? Because malaria is a parasite that typically enters the red blood cell of normal healthy individual, but this malaria cannot survive in the sickled cells that can be found in individuals who are affected. As such, carriers, heterozygous individual, are more resistant towards malaria instead. Alright, so this is one advantage that comes about due to how the environment evolved over time. Next, we'll be talking about chromosomal mutation, and there is only one example that you need to know: Down syndrome, also known as trisomy 21, because there are 3 copies of chromosome 21 found in individual with Down syndrome. right? So Down syndrome individual have 47 chromosome instead of 46. And based on this karyotype, all right, what can you tell apart from the individual being someone with Down syndrome? This individual is also a male, all right, based on the chromosome chart over here. Down syndrome affects a person's development, but does not compromises or does not reduce their ability to be successful in life as well. All right, we have seen many exceptional people with Down syndrome who really carve their path and shine in different ways that they could. Some became actresses, some became designers, and even Olympians. All right, that go that strive for their best and work really hard to achieve the results that they have achieved. So how does this happen? All right, how does this happen? Like what I mentioned just now. All right, why is there this extra chromosome? Is due to an error during gamete production. It could happen to either the father or the mother, but in this case, all right, it happens to the mother instead. So what happens? All right, during the production of gametes, your sperm and your egg, each sperm and each egg, all right, should receive half. So if half of the number of chromosome, so if your normal cell has 46 chromosome, right, each of these gametes should receive 23 each. So if you have one pair of chromosome 21, as seen in this picture over here, okay, to represent chromosome 21, each of your gametes will receive only one copy. However, when there is an error during gamete production, sometimes both copy ends up in one gamete. All right, so you have two copy of chromosome 21 in an egg, and there is 0 copy of 21 in another egg. However, if this abnormal egg successfully fertilized with another sperm, giving rise to a zygote that has 3 copies of chromosome 21 instead. Like what I mentioned, this can also happen to fathers as well, but in this illustration, it affected the mother herself. There are many reasons to explain the error behind gamete production, but sometimes it also happens unexpectedly and suddenly. So it's really hard to pinpoint the factor that may cause an error during gamete production to happen. Normally, zygote with extra chromosome fail to develop, but sometimes there are exceptions. Zygote with an extra chromosome 21 is able to still develop normally, despite the error in the number of chromosomes. And one factor that could possibly explain the extra chromosome and the error of gamete production is when women have children at a later age. So why are women often advised to have children early in their prime time, in their early 30s, is because the older they get, all right, the higher the chance that the copies of the chromosome do not separate properly during gamete formation. But this does not mean that every late pregnancy will result in Down syndrome. There are still many other factors to be studied and understood. Alright, so you can see that at the age of 20, if a mother has a kid at early 20s, there is still a chance of 1 out of 2,000 babies suffering from Down syndrome. But when they have children at the age of 40, alright, the odds is unfortunately higher. There is a chance of 1 out of 50 children born by mothers in their 40s all right, having the chance of having Down syndrome. So in summary, all right, you need to know two types of mutation: genetic mutation, all right, and the two examples are albinism and sickle cell anemia, and the second type is chromosomal mutation, right, which is Down syndrome. Not all mutations are bad. Some mutations are good, as we can see in sickle cell anemia, all right, how it helps individual to be less prone to suffering from malaria. Okay, so in conclusion, not all mutations are bad. Lastly, you need to know what are some factors that increase the rate of mutation. All right, for example, UV, X-ray, and some cancer-causing chemicals that increases the chance of mutation. So what these chemicals referred to as? Are referred to as mutagenic agent because it increases the chance of mutation. So some examples are ionizing radiation such as UV, gamma ray, and X-ray. Some chemicals include mustard gas, formaldehyde, all right, and many others. I advise you to remember at least one of each example, all right, because you need to give example in your answer. So I would suggest memorizing ultraviolet light for ionizing radiation, and then for chemicals you can memorize mustard gas as well as formaldehyde. So some of these chemicals are typically used as weapons during war as well. So what happens when one is exposed to radiation for a extended period of time? This is what happens to your cells in your body.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ziad Kazi, a medical toxicologist working with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Scientists have been studying the effects of radiation on the body for over 100 years, so we know quite a bit about how radiation interacts with living tissue. Let's take a closer look at how the amount of radiation our bodies receive, otherwise known as the dose, can affect the cells in our bodies.
Once a cell is damaged by ionizing radiation, three things can happen. One possibility is that the cell can repair itself. The cell would then go back to normal. Another possibility is that the damage is not repaired or is misrepaired, so the cell is altered. This alteration may eventually lead to cancer. The third possibility is that there is too much damage to the cell and the cell dies. Cell death is not always a bad option. In addition to dose, the health effects of radiation also depend on the dose rate, or how fast the dose is received. If a person receives a dose over an extended period of time, the health impact won't be as severe as if the dose were received all at once. If the dose is delivered to a portion of the body, the health impact won't be as severe as if the dose were delivered to the whole body. Individual sensitivity to radiation is also a factor. Children and young adults are more likely to develop the late effects of radiation. Young age increases risk for two reasons. Younger people have more cells that are dividing rapidly and tissues that are growing. And they have a longer lifespan ahead of them, giving cancers time to develop.
Remember, radiation can affect the body in a number of ways, and the effects of exposure may not be known for many years. For low doses of radiation, there may be no health effects at all. If the dose of radiation is high, medical professionals may perform tests or conduct regular screening to detect and treat health effects. For more information on how radiation interacts with the body, please visit our website.
Due to the effect of radiation, all right, pregnant ladies are often not advised to take X-ray. and this must be made known before the test is done. Why is that so? When a woman is pregnant and undergoes any form of X-ray scans in the hospital, it may result in stunted growth, deformity, and abnormal function of the brain of the child as the child develops. It may also sometimes result in cancer when the cells divide uncontrollably. That first result in the formation of tumor, and when it starts spreading to other organs, it results in cancer. Alright, and that's all that we have for mutation. Please fill in your notes, and when we return back to school, I can do a quick consolidation on the entire chapter 13 when we meet again.